Many of us grew up in the United States accustomed to the imperial measuring system that is used here. But somewhere in our education, we've taken a science class or two that where everything was based on the metric system. So this was often a little bit confusing at first, considering it was a whole new foreign measurement system. But by the end of class, it was usually much easier to use than any imperial measurement that we've grown up with. So my name is Patrick Danley, and today I will be asking you to help integrate the metric system into your daily lives. After substantial research and many life experiences involving frustrations in imperial and metric conversions, I would like to see Americans take a very good shot at involving, if not completely, switching to the metric system. So I will start today by explaining the flaws that the imperial system now has and how a switch to the metric system would make, and save many industries, scientific fields, and even just your average day person from unneeded conversion hassles and, accidents. So I'll start off with how everyone could benefit from switching to the metric system. The benefits and need to switch to the metric system have never really been more apparent, not just locally, but especially on a national and international level. One of the first places this applies to the United States is the medication and pharmaceutical fields, which might not be the first thing that comes to your mind on this. So in an article by Edward J. Hallerman through an interaction article, some proportion of the 23,000 prescription medication-related deaths in the U.S. are errors due to conversion issues, such as if a medication has a metric dosage rate, but the pharmacy is using the American measurement rate for these. So anything that can be done to reduce these deaths becomes consequential and very important. This shows that America is trying to stick with its own system when prescriptions which have the metric dosage rates could have accidentally been overdosages, and if not done exactly right, can have very fatal consequences. So another place the metric system could greatly benefit the United States is in the education of future generations. In order for future generations to be able to work in a connected and international world to any nation on the planet, knowing how to navigate the metric system is crucial, especially in any field or trade. Having to use both standard and metric systems, some say, can help students' math skills. Sure, but they have a downside. Also summarized from this interaction article by Edward J. Hallerman, the American student having to calculate and recalculate equations and measurements from standard to metric may help their math skills, but leaves many calculations error-prone. In some fields, such as aerospace, these minute differences can cause massive failures which are not acceptable in a field such as that, as every little measurement is crucial. In a report by NASA released in 1999 on their Mars climate orbital failure, the root cause of the loss of the spacecraft was the failed translation of English units to metric units in a segment of ground-based navigation-related mission software. This is one of many less than small incidents caused by metric to standard conversions all across the world, not just space. This list includes famous names like Hubble Telescope, Big Ben Bell in London, and the Millennium Bridge also in London, all having small to major issues from metric to standard conversion issues. So now, after seeing some of the glaring issues that these miscalculations and conversions could cause, let's see how the U.S. Metric Association is involving and working to help the American metrication and explain its origins. The U.S. Metric Association, the USMA as I'll refer to it, strives to complete and assist the United States conversion to the metric system. That is their sole job and want. That is their drive. So the USMA works extensively with the United States government to help both preserve and continue America's metrication process. As stated on their website, under USMA missions and activities, USMA has developed lines of communication with people in positions of authority in federal and state governments, both legislative and executive branches. So the association drives to bring the work of itself along with that of individuals, companies, and of course the U.S. government. They do this to make the transition as easy and straightforward as it can possibly be on a national level. Also, on the USMA site, under About USMA, it states the USMA maintains the largest collection of metric data available, consisting of historical files, contemporary data, and detailed technical data. Along with advocating for the metric changes, the USMA also keeps an extensive database of any and everything surrounding the current metric system. One of these many things it covers very well is the history of the modern metric system as we know it and its beginnings. So what this includes is that on their website it goes in great detail, but just an overview of the metric history is in 1668 an English clergyman proposed a coordinated unit of measurement for philosophers, as at that time any sort of object or person or thing could be a unit of measurement, whether that was a stick on the ground or someone's finger. They could use that as a measurement tool. So others proposed similar ideas but were not widely accepted at the time due just to a poor political climate, more or less. That is until the French Revolution. The Bishop of Autun sponsored the French Academy to appoint several committees to come up with a standardized measurement system. The winning system ended up being based upon a length equal to 1/10,000,000th of the length from the North Pole to the equator, aka the meridian line. So this measurement was then applied to both weights and volumes, or really anything involving measurements. And what this did was tie the whole units together and made it as simple as possible. All measurements were to be multiples of 10 of the base measurement. This base measurement was named the meter, which we are all now quite aware of. Getting the original measurement was difficult using the tools at the time, as they were just very primitive, and also the countryside population that they were doing the measurements in was not exactly happy to see them wanting to change their measurement system, as the US is still doing today. But when the time came, along with the people in the countryside, many countries favored the switch when it was done. The entirety of Europe and almost the entire rest of the world was converted to the new metric system after World War II, only a few hundred years after it was conceived, really. So if we take a step back a little bit, we'll see how the US was involved in going metric, as weird as that sounds now. So in 1875, they signed the Treaty of the Meter along with many other countries, saying they were devoted to switching to the metric system to make the world trade and commerce easier. Since then, all non-metric measurements in the US, such as the inch, foot, yard, etc., that we are very familiar with, is based on a metric measurement. So as weird as that sounds, that is the truth, and that's how we have a standard foot, inch, yard, etc., is that it's based on the metric system. The only real attempts that lawmakers ever took to make a complete conversion of the US was in 1971, when they placed a bill that allowed states to voluntarily convert to the metric system. It started with the bill having a 10-year limit for the state to convert to the metric system. The final revision of the bill had no due date per se, so no one took any real incentives besides there is one road sign in Arizona that has kilometers on it. that is about it. That's about all that remains of that effort. But an amendment in 1988 to this bill establishes the metric system as the official system of trade and commerce in the U.S. So any shipping, any amount of, let's say, foodstuffs, anything like that is all going to be measured in kilograms, or if it's a length, then meters, or anything like that involved with trade, especially international trade, will be based on the metric system. So this required that each federal agency, and I quote, by the end of the fiscal year in 1992, the use of the metric system of measurements on its procurements, grants, and other business-related activities to the extent feasible and practical. So, to any extent that made pretty reasonable sense, please use the metric system to do measurements. And still to this day, we're using that. But regardless of the bill, the U.S. was to maintain a trade power. It would need to use the metric system to keep the international customers and business partners. Because, well, if you don't use the same weights and measures as them, then you could possibly be trying to get a business advantage by getting more or less product without them knowing for sure. So jumping forward now, back to the USMA, it also has more than just the history and global politics of the metric system. It also has an up-to-date graph of who and what time these countries officially switched to the metric system. There's one major country, as you're probably aware, that is missing from this graph. On USMA's website, under metrification in other countries, and then under the metrification status and history, there is a graph, and under this graph it quotes, among countries not claiming to be metric, the U.S. is the only significant holdout. So the U.S., being one of the largest national superpowers in the world, is the only holdout on this graph. The only one. The other, I believe, 2 or 3 countries are very, very small countries on this graph. Every single other large country in Europe, Asia, Mexico, Canada, our neighbors, are all metric besides the U.S. This is why the USMA is so important. It not just backs up the importance of switching, but it believes it is its job to help this prospect come as soon as possible, that being the full metrification of the U.S. And one final way the USMA is helping America and its citizens to slowly convert or quickly convert to the metric system is the publication of its newsletter, Metric Today, which started all the way back in the 1920s. Under About USMA, you can find the way to get to their newsletter. But in a quick little blip about their newsletter, it states, the Metric Association, as it was originally known, was created on December 27, 1916, and began publishing quarterly newsletters titled Measurement, which was its original name, in October of 1925. So this letter is one of few solely devoted to the metrification of the U.S. and providing solid metric information and tools. Now, summing things up, the need for the United States to switch to the metric system was highlighted through some terrible and very preventable events, just because we don't want to switch. But I talked about how USMA is helping the metrification of Americas through historical, education, and their current newsletter. To help USMA keep all of these, both newsletters and events, alive and well, you can sign up and become a member of the USMA today. So how you do this is simply go to usma.org, and under membership go to USMA membership application. Fill out this personal application and select your payment that you would like to do for your membership dues, and then mail it to the address on top of the application. So besides just the membership fees, you can also add any amount you would like to donate. You can donate as much as you want, and they very much appreciate donations, as that helps them keep the newsletter, events, sponsorships, everything they do. It helps keep that up and can help this process go just a little bit quicker. So looking back at the history of how the metric system came to be, it's apparent that it wasn't a fast or easy path getting there, as the US is showing today. But if we would like to be a unified world in this measurement, it would be to our advantage. But with your help, the US can avoid more conversion nightmares, both in the classrooms and in work fields, and then allow the future generations to hate math class that much less. Thank you very much.